Welcome to The Human Code, the podcast where technology meets humanity, and the future is shaped by the leaders and innovators of today. I'm your host, Don Finley, inviting you on a journey through the fascinating world of tech, leadership, and personal growth. Here, we delve into the stories of visionary minds who are not only driving technological advancement, but also embodying the personal journeys and insights that inspire us all. Each episode, we explore the intersections where human ingenuity meets the cutting edge of technology, unpacking the experiences, challenges, and triumphs that define our era. So, whether you're a tech enthusiast, an inspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the human narratives behind the digital revolution, you're in the right place. Welcome to The Human Code. Welcome. I am super excited today to be joined by Kathleen Walch and Ronald Schmelzer. Schmelzer. Yeah. Schmelzer. Yeah. I greatly appreciate both of you being here today. They are experts in the field of AI implementation. And if you've been following the world for the last, year and a half, this is a really popular subject. Yet, all three of us have been doing this for probably about a decade now. And being experienced in AI implementation is just a fun place to be. As we always start this out, I would just love to understand what got you here today and what drives your passion for this subject.
That's great. So I actually started my career in marketing. So I was not involved in technology and artificial intelligence and also data analytics, and realized quickly that the world of technology is making its way into every single industry. My husband and I had founded a startup back in 2012, and it ultimately ended up failing, but learned a lot along the way. And that's actually where I met Ron and started working with Ron at Tech Breakfast, which was a morning demo style event. I joined in 2014, and we were in about 12 locations across the US, from Boston to New York City and the DC region. We had a few locations. North Carolina, Austin, Texas, and then, of course, Silicon Valley. And in around 2016, we really started to see voice assistants gaining a lot of attention. And this is when all of the companies started to come out with their voice assistants. And we said, okay, this is hot, and this is going to be transformational. Artificial intelligence is really going to be transformational. And we pivoted into Cognilytica, which is where we are now. So we started out as an AI-focused research advisory and education firm, very much Gartner style, covering the AI markets. And it has been a wild ride. We really started in 2017, and the industry has changed so much in the past half decade or so.
That is amazing. And Ron, what about yourself?
Yeah, well, Ron Schmelzer, I'm one of the managing partners here also at Cognilytica, and co-host of the AI Today podcast, which we've been doing now since 2017, over 400 some odd episodes. And but you'd think just as much as you could have everything to talk about, we still run out of, we have tons of things to talk about. We never run out of things to talk about AI Today. So how did I get into all this? It goes way back. I actually did go to MIT, and one of my professors, one of my undergraduate advisors, Rodney Brooks, who was one of the big proponents of that second wave of AI when people were doing expert systems back in those days. And he was building these tiny little bots. And his theory was that bots should learn by exploring the world around them, not necessarily by being taught by some expert. So he actually had a contrary position on all that. And you may or may not know Rodney Brooks, but he founded a company called iRobot with somebody named Colin Angle, who ended up became the CEO. And of course, they produced the Roomba. So that was like their output of all of this. Of all their work on robotics. Of course, the subject is much more complicated than that. But I actually didn't really do much at all with AI. I graduated, was a computer science person. I actually started a startup back in the dot-com days, focused on the e-commerce space. That company just was roaring, and raised money back when everybody was like, the dot-com hype was happening. And the company was acquired. And then I actually started an analyst firm focused on something called service-oriented architecture in the space of enterprise architecture. And it's really interesting because that company grew and didn't raise a penny, but it grew and it got acquired for cash, which was probably the better outcome, honestly. And then started really focusing on technology innovation. And that's when I started Tech Breakfast. Then later, Kathleen joined me for that. As you probably heard the rest of that story. And I think like the big common thread among all of these things, and it's funny because now I start referring back to those earlier years, is that we're in the same phase right now with AI that we were with the internet back in the dot-com days when everybody thought the internet was the web and everybody thought the web was searching, right? And you're like, okay, that's really important. This is what gets everybody hooked, right? This is the entry point that a lot of people feel, just like right now, generative AI and prompts and things like GPT are the entry point for a lot of people. But obviously, the internet was more than just web and searching. We have email and things like that. And then also, people were all trying to figure out, like, they knew it was transformative. They knew it was going to change their lives and the lives of their organizations, but nobody quite knew what they were doing. Everybody was trying everything. It took like over more than a decade, right after the development of the internet, before we even got something like YouTube or Facebook. Right? So it took a long time for us to figure out what the real patterns were. But then once we figured out, it's here, it's part of our daily lives. And that's where we are right now with AI. Everybody's still feeling their legs, even though AI has been around for decades. We're now in this entry point, right, where most people now have some access to.
Absolutely. And I can resonate with you as well. I have my degree in computer science and with a focus on artificial intelligence, but I graduated in the early 2000s. And so we're talking about the winter
Right.
of AI, right? Like where we didn't have the computational power, we didn't have the data sets to do the cool things that we wanted to do with neural nets, thinking that there was going to be something powerful from that, but couldn't actually get there. And I love the point that you just brought up about the digital transformation that we had in the early 2000s as well with the dot-com boom, and that transformation of how we had to learn how to use that technology that was coming in, right? Like that it's more than search. There's email, there's video, there's different distribution methods, the e-commerce side of it as well. And I'm sure that this kind of leads into something we talked about pre-show, the 7 patterns of AI. Is this a good spot for us to jump into that piece?
Yeah, actually, this is a great segue into it because just like how you can do many different things on the internet, how you talked about, when you talk about artificial intelligence, it really is this umbrella term. And I may be talking about AI-enabled chatbots. You may be talking about autonomous vehicles. Ron may be talking about generative AI or predictive analytics, hyper-personalization. There's a lot of different ways that we can talk about AI when we say that term. So what we realized a few years ago, actually, maybe in around 2018, was that we needed to break it down one level deeper. And we said, okay, it's one thing to talk about AI, but really let's talk one level lower about what we are trying to accomplish when it comes to AI. And that's when we developed the 7 patterns of AI. Now, we've talked about how AI is the oldest, newest technology, right? The term was officially coined in 1956. We've gone through AI winters. So unfortunately, we've been through 2 before, which is a period of decline in investment and decline in excitement, decline in adoption by various organizations and the industry people as a whole. So we don't want to get there again. So we always say, okay, what exactly do we mean when we're talking about artificial intelligence? We break it down into a wheel so that one is no more important than the other. So the first is hyper-personalization. So this is treating each individual as an individual, and no longer do I have to bucket you in groups or different categories. And this, of course, we say is a marketer's dream, where you're able to reach the exact right person at the exact right time with the exact right message. But also think about this as hyper-personalized education or hyper-personalized healthcare. How can I treat you as an individual and really specifically target and tailor my treatment and care around your specific body and your specific needs? And also hyper-personalized finance. So we really can broadly expand upon that. Then we have our recognition pattern. So this is making sense of unstructured data. We think about the majority of data that we have at organizations. It's unstructured, right? It's emails and videos, many different things that are unstructured. So this makes sense of unstructured data. We think about a great application of the recognition pattern is facial recognition or image or object recognition. Then we have our conversational pattern of AI. So this is, of course, what is really hot right now. This is how we have computers and humans talk to each other in the language of humans. So AI-enabled chatbots is an example. Also generative AI is an example here. Then we have our patterns and anomalies. So machines are really good at being able to spot patterns in data, being able to digest data super, super quickly, way faster than humans, and being able to spot trends and patterns in the data and also outliers. So you think about fraud detection. Predictive analytics and decision support is another pattern. And that is really taking past or current data and helping humans make better decisions. So we're not removing the human from the loop here. We also have goal-driven systems. So this is really around reinforcement learning and finding the most optimal path to a solution. So we think about game playing. And then we have our autonomous pattern of AI. So the autonomous pattern, the goal of that is to remove the human from the loop. So we like to think about autonomous vehicles. We like to think about the hardware side of it, and autonomous robots, but we can also have autonomous software. So how can it optimally navigate internally at an organization? What I like to point out is that autonomous pattern and automation are not the same. And a lot of people confuse that. So automation is just repeating a task over and over. And it is incredibly useful and incredibly powerful. A lot of people saw benefits, especially during the pandemic, but it's not intelligent. So we always say, don't confuse automation and autonomous.
I love the breakdown of this because like you're pointing out the things that are very hot today, the conversational side of it. We see a lot of requests right now for companies wanting to utilize their unstructured data and to create both, let's say, RAG applications, right? Or Q&A chatbots on their own, being able to interrogate it, where that is entirely different from having an autonomous agent that can actually go out and do something with that data. Or in the terms of like data science, right? Like we take data, we turn it into information and then to knowledge and then to wisdom. Whereas like you may be able to easily turn data into information, but it requires a little bit more reasoning to be able to turn it into knowledge and wisdom. And those are different patterns to implement. Ron, any other additional insights that you have on like these patterns that we're seeing in the world?
I think what you were just mentioning, one of those insights, which is that these patterns are not different patterns are harder than others to do. Some of them have longer times to realize some sort of investment. Some require more sophisticated personnel or some tools, more advanced data. And I think that was like the biggest tip off for us. And this is what has gone into why some projects may seem easier and faster and lower cost and easier ROI may not need data scientists and other ones do, because these, even though it's all AI, the applications are not the same. This sort of goes back to the discussion of the internet, which is I'm doing the internet. It's one thing to say you're building a website. It's another thing to say you're building a streaming video application. It's another thing to say you're doing e-commerce or email or things like that. And right now, as you mentioned, generative AI and tools like that are so democratized. People have such easy access to it, whether it's free or whether it's low cost. It may be built into tools that they already own now. That's the thing. The little magic sparkle is just showing up everywhere. And so you may be having it whether or not you even want to use it, but it's good for certain categories of things. You can't use generative AI to drive your car or forecast sales for your company or detect credit card fraud or whatever it is, even though those are some of the other patterns of AI. And I think this is the conversation. It's a healthy conversation that we're having, I think, all of us with product developers and business owners and folks who are trying to make use. They see the promise, right? And some of the things always feel magical. Even now, we've all been immersed in this field of AI, but we're like, it's delightful to see, oh my goodness, I gave this raw piece of data to some machine learning model. I asked it for some insights, and lo and behold, it provides some insights. Not perfect, might require a little reprompting, but it still feels magical, right?
And it's an incredible resource. And I know in my own personal use, right? Like if I'm developing something, I treat the AI as if it's like an intern for me, right? Like it's that kind of relationship that we have where it's clearly I'm driving and it's following, but it's providing a tremendous amount of value in that capability. And then additionally, for areas like marketing, not my strong suit, I allow it to drive a little bit more, but in the same capacity, like you still have to be checking it. Where are the areas that you're seeing like the highest ROI right now in the space of AI? Because we're talking, there's plenty of places that you could go. And I don't think there's too many companies that we're talking to that are doing autonomous driving, which is an incredibly difficult, challenging field to be in.
So when we look at, this is a great question, because we always say you have to make sure that you're solving a real business problem. And then you have to make sure that the return on investment is worth it. So when we think about the patterns of AI, the autonomous pattern of AI is the hardest to implement and will be the most costly to implement. So whenever possible, we say don't start with that. Now, your application can have more than one pattern as well. So we always like to say, think big, start small, and iterate often. So think about the big impact that you want, but then start small. So we also talk about augmented intelligence, which is what you just said, where you're not having it replace the human, but you're helping the human do their job better. You're going to have great ROI when you do that because you can do what you do well, and then you have the AI system do what it does well, and together you can have really powerful results. We've also seen great ROI when it comes to conversational patterns. So when we think about AI-enabled chatbots, implementing large language models, generative AI, you can see some immediate results there as well. Recognition pattern we've seen as well, especially if you don't need to collect and label all of that data and you can use third-party models that are out there.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, I think one of the things that I come across is this is new.
Mhm.
Well,
For most people.
for most people it is,
And we
right?
call it the old technology. It really is.
And it's incredible. And that was one of the things that I would always say is we've been doing AI for years. The Turing test was
Yeah.
like first passed a long time ago. Not in the most impressive of ways, but it still could trick a human
Right.
into thinking like, hey, is this a computer behind the box or is this somebody else? So we've been doing that for a while. We've been doing image classification for over 10 years now on a large scale basis. And then additionally, people have been doing regression analysis and predictions for what seemed like forever, right? But at the same time, doing it in a way with artificial intelligence for at least the last 10
Mhm.
years as well. We've talked about some of the benefits. What are the pitfalls that people need to be watching out for in their implementations?
Well, quite a few. And I think people are starting to already discover these pitfalls, even with their very casual use of AI in the prompt engineering and large language models. Of course, AI systems are subject to problems. They are not perfect, right? They have a lot of inaccuracies, mainly because they're probabilistic systems. We keep telling people that they don't produce necessarily even the same result twice with the same input data because these are all machines that are trained on data, and this data, there's learned patterns, but there's no guarantees on anything. And that's actually both the benefit and the drawback of AI. It's like AI is great for solving problems that are of a probabilistic nature, like conversations and images that don't appear the same way twice, or navigating the streets, or all these things where there's a high level of variability. That's when we want to use AI, because the alternative would be to have people do that sort of stuff. But of course, the flip side of that is that there's inaccuracies and there's bias and there's hallucinations and systems that are creating things that people trust when they should not be trusting them. Of course, you have bad people doing bad things with data. We talk about people not necessarily being able to believe what they hear, what they see, what they read, any of that sort of stuff. The fake stuff is getting too fake, too good, right? You mentioned about passing the Turing test. It's like machines are really easily able now to fool people. I think we need to train ourselves. We're talking about training machines. We need to learn ourselves how to have less faith in things that are electronic media because electronic media is too easily faked. So there's a lot of side issues there. I think from like an organizational perspective, I think people are still thinking they have the wrong perspective on investment with AI. Some things are really very easy, very trivial, and I think they should let their employees become productive and let them use these tools with sufficient guardrails, right? To prevent them putting customer data and private data in them. Also, not necessarily always taking all the stuff that comes out of these systems at their face value, but they should let them be productive because they'll be much more productive. But on the other hand, when they're trying to make big investments, sometimes they have they would call the over promise and under deliver, which is the chronic problem with AI, trying to make it do everything and it can't do everything, misapplying the technology to the wrong problem set. So these are, I think, again, these are all growing pains, right? We're all trying to learn what we can do with this very powerful new capability we have. And there's lots of other challenges around vendor lock-in issues and open source and all that stuff. But these are maybe more technical topics for later.
Yeah. And
Exactly. But I think you've hit on a really important aspect of this is that your approach to AI needs to be both at an individual job function, right? Allowing tools to be used so that individual can be more productive. And then at an organizational level as well. What workflows can we implement this in? What new technology can we bring in to be more effective as a team? But like you need both because there's also a paradigm shift that has to occur inside of the organization around this is a whole new set of tools. And it isn't deterministic like you were talking about earlier. It is something that can create different results. There's also the opportunity, like we saw a lawyer submit what do lawyers do in court? They submit something.
Case law
briefs. They do briefs,
stuff,
right? And they did it with ChatGPT, in which the brief was littered with inaccuracies and also just made up documents or made up court cases.
Right.
And so it does require that human in the middle to be participating. Kathleen, I think you were going to jump in as well on this.
Yeah. So we always say AI is not a set it and forget it. So you can't just put it out there. I think that also a lot of organizations, one of the, pitfalls and downsides that we've seen is that for a lot of reasons, they just want to do AI in air quotes. They feel pressure to do this. They think their competition is doing it. And so they say, we just need to get out there. We need to just do something. Just whatever it is, just do it. And when you follow a best practice methodology, you really need to start with business understanding. We talked about that ROI as well. What problem are you trying to solve? Make sure that you're actually solving a real business problem. Then if you are, is AI the right solution? Or could it be something else like automation? Could you code your way to that? And if AI is, then now we can move forward. But we've seen that a lot of organizations just want to get something out there and that they are not, because it is not a set it and forget it, you need to continuously monitor it as well. So one example that you gave was, all right, somebody just wasn't really double checking his work. And so he didn't use it as that augmented intelligence tool. He used it to replace the human. And then you can get into issues because you just take what it says and think that it's the truth. There's been others very recently where different companies and government organizations are just putting ChatGPT into their websites and ends up coming up with answers that are false, and they're getting into a lot of trouble. So Air Canada recently got in trouble. They were taken to small claims court because somebody asked the chatbot on their website what the bereavement policy was. The chatbot provided one example. The website had a different answer, even though the chatbot was on the website, but the written word on the website was different. And Air Canada said, yeah, maybe the chatbot did give that answer, but the website's authoritative. And so we need to go with what the website says. And they actually lost the case in court because they never had any disclosure around that. Also, New York City recently has gotten into a lot of trouble with their chatbot because it was supposed to be meant to help navigate the complexities of different laws and regulations in New York City. One was tenant laws, one was around restaurants as well. And the answers that the chatbot was giving actually, in some cases, violated the law. So if people followed through with what the chatbot said, they would be breaking the law. So we need to be paying attention. Yeah. And so it's really terrible. So one of the examples was around Section 8 vouchers. Do landlords need to take that? And under very few circumstances, do you not? But in general, you do, and you can't discriminate against that. But the chatbot said that they could discriminate against it. And another example was somebody asked, can I serve cheese that has been nibbled on by a rodent in my restaurant? And the chatbot said, yes, you can. Just be careful and maybe let your customers know. Could you imagine if you went to a restaurant and had some cheese that a rat had eaten on earlier in the day? So
oh my God, that's
right. Yeah.
I'm somewhat speechless at this. And at the same time, these are the examples of why it's important to basically be monitoring your AI. The common example that I give is you don't just let your employees go off and do everything without any bit of supervision. We're basically talking about replacing intelligence in some areas and decision making. These are the first sets of tools that we've invented as a species that really has a decision making capability that goes along with it. And so the way that we always tell our customers to look at their implementation is first, think you're going to put a human in that seat. And then you're replacing that human's task with something that's AI, but it is augmented in that capability, and know that you need like a supervisory function that comes along to help understand where it's going wrong as well. Because there is, as Kathleen pointed out earlier, iteration is a huge part of this process. It is not a set it and forget it
Right.
type of implementation approach.
That's a behavior people are going to have to
What
learn because they do want to set it and forget it.
We're all busy people. We all want to move at the speed of light as it goes. And then additionally, there's a lot of things that every person is just either overworked or is overcommitted in many different areas. We're all looking for that little bit of work-life balance in some ways, especially the hustlers and the shakers. The question that I have for you though is like, where in your own personal life or in your business are you most excited about what this technology can bring for yourselves?
Oh, so many. Like every day, there's like a new model, a new tool, a new technology, and I'm constantly looking. I read a lot of the news sources. Of course, we have a newsletter that comes out, so read it for that. Also, I'm a hacker news reader, so I love all the stuff that comes out. There are always new models and things like that. I'm obviously excited because I love to educate. I love to share information and knowledge. Anything that basically optimizes the content cycle. It's wonky, but yeah, these AI tools are getting better and better. I still look for that tool. Like now, any natural language process task so easy now for these models to do, whether it's generation or analysis or summarization or conversion, whatever it is you want it to do. Like now, if it's an NLP problem, the machine can do it probably better than a human, right? I'm still looking for the image stuff is interesting. A lot of people love the image and the video stuff. It's not quite there yet, but I'd love a tool where I could say, here's a paragraph of text. Now go ahead and generate some slides or some education material, right? I'm surprised we're not quite there yet, but I feel like we're getting there. Or I could say, and I think that's what's really exciting. I think if you turn that into education, personal education, this is might be tough being a public school teacher in the next decade. I think students can learn more from an interactive conversation with a smart language model, as long as all the facts are verifiable, than they can from an instructor. And because they can dive deeper, they can ask for clarification. They can ask for, wait a second, I didn't understand that. Can you maybe explain it a different way? Explain it like I'm 5, explain it like I'm 50, whatever. Explain maybe how does this relate to this? And that is like the really big promise. I think AI's impact on education is maybe one of the most understated that's out there.
And I think that helps
Nice.
with lifelong learning as well, where, children K through 12, maybe some higher ed, you can learn. But then once you graduate and you're in the working world, you don't get that continuous education in the same way. So how can AI help you be that lifelong learner? We also talk a lot about growth mindset. So how do you continue to have a growth mindset and implement that? So that hyper personalization is really exciting. Personally, especially a few years ago, I was really bullish on autonomous vehicles so that I don't need to drive anymore. The promise, I think we overhyped and underdelivered on that. So we're not there yet, but eventually that is a dream of mine where I just don't need to drive anymore. I can get in a car and go wherever, and I don't need to be paying attention.
I would love autonomous vehicles as well, but it's probably like the second order like thing that I'm really excited about is having less vehicles on the road. Living in a downtown area, right? 90% of vehicles basically sit around for a good portion of time. And if we could free up that space, I think we'd have a little bit more greenery that we could bring in, more entertainment, but absolutely fantastic. And I completely agree, Ron. Personalized education is an area that let's just say, I think we're going to see it. I know we're going to see it. I love the idea of having like my own personalized growth plan that like my phone, that any device could help me in being that on-site coach for everything that I'm doing, and really helping to be accountable towards that as well would be absolutely fantastic. Now, for anybody who's really listening, we have our decision makers. We've talked a lot about what goes into the overall kind of like projects, but then we also have the people on the streets, and really that's everybody. How do you prepare yourself for this new digital transformation that's really been jump-started over the past few years?
Yeah, if I could start here, I think the biggest thing that we spend our time talking about, like our business, but also the thing that really motivates us, is that there are ways, despite all this variability in the outcomes for AI, we can implement AI in a very rigorous way, if you will, a more predictable way. And there is a process, there is a method that's out there for running and managing AI projects. People right now think that, oh, it's really maybe only for machine learning engineers or data scientists or people like that to build AI. AI is here. It's becoming part of everything. It's now going to become, a lot of people are going to be involved now in running and managing AI projects. So one of the things that we developed, as we mentioned earlier, like 2017, 2018 timeframe, as a methodology for running and managing AI projects. It's called the CPM AI, the Cognitive Project Management for AI. It's really a 6-step process. It's a set of phases by which people can go through and iterate. So if you're going to, especially if you're building an AI system that you're going to become dependent on, whether it's a product or a service, or maybe something that's going to change your organization, some process, you should probably not just put the AI in first and then worry about it later. You should probably figure out what problem you're going to solve and how to iterate it. It's very methodologically focused. And our biggest thing is just getting people out there to understand what that is, learn the methodology, learn the framework, understand how to apply it, and really get it out there. So we've been spending a lot of our time focused on that. We have free courses that people can learn about this CPM AI methodology. If you go to our aitoday.live site, go to aitoday.live/CPM AI, you can register yourself for it. So that's like our biggest thing right now, but we're doing a whole lot of stuff. And Kathleen, you can add to that.
Yeah. So I think that when people think about AI, they always go, how is it going to impact me right now, today? And that is one way to look at it. But then, as Ron said, you also have to look at, how am I managing AI projects? And even if you don't think of yourself as a PM, you can insert P, product, program, manager. You still need to be thinking about, how is AI going to impact my organization? And really everybody can benefit from this, because we want to make sure that, are we solving a real business problem when we're bringing it into our organization? Okay, then what are our data needs? Everybody, you mentioned earlier, wants to be able to tap into that unstructured data. How do we do it in a way that is actually going to be beneficial? Because we talk about that return on investment. It's not free to tap into that data. There's a cost to it. You need to collect the data. Yeah. We still have a lot of data silos. Some are good, some are not so good reasons why we have that. So you need to get that data. You need to prepare that data, clean that data, and then be able to use that data. So when you think about, from that methodology standpoint, how and why do I want to do this project? Really, everybody at the organization can benefit. And I think that can be translated into your personal life as well.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. I got to say, I've really enjoyed the conversation. And I know you said AIlive.today.
AItoday.live.
AItoday.live. I said that. I was like, I don't even think that's a top level domain. AItoday.live is the actual site. I greatly appreciate that. I think you've hit on something. We need methodologies, and we need new methodologies to help us through this new transformation. And it's really exciting. That's what you guys have been putting out there, tried and tested. It sounds like it's been going for a few years, much longer than like we've had really this, I don't want to call it a renaissance with ChatGPT, but it seems like that's the killer app that kicked people into this new understanding of like how we can use
a new wave of excitement around AI, where it's really
say that again?
A new wave of excitement. And also we say it's helped cross the chasm. Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm.
Yep.
Right. And that's how we think about it. So that we've for a long time had those innovators, very early adopters, but now it's become more mainstream and everybody is talking about artificial intelligence. And yes, it's just one pattern, right, of AI. It's not everything, but it really has helped that excitement to AI.
Exactly. And the other thing to note is generative AI is actually still a small investment sector for overall AI as well. And I think like you've identified the 7 patterns of which AI gets implemented. It showcases like there's a lot of areas in which it isn't just conversational. It isn't that cognitive kind of like load that we look at. Other predictions. When do you think we get AGI? Or is this like the car? Is this autonomous driving?
I'll put this
again?
out there. And Rodney Brooks has this little tracker that he does. I don't know if you've seen it, where he makes these predictions and sees how well he does. He measures himself against his own predictions. Good for him. Yeah. And he
Yeah.
says, like, he makes it sound like, we will not see an autonomous taxi before the year, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I call that or not. I tend to be of the belief that I think we're farther away from AGI than it may seem, even though you talk about the DIK, we add the U to the DIKUW pyramid, data, information, knowledge, and then there's understanding before the wisdom. And the reason why that is because there is that little gap between simply spotting patterns, which is basically that we're at the knowledge layer, right? We've already done information, which is basically extracting information from data, charts and reports and things like that. But the human has to spot the pattern. Now the machines are spotting the pattern. So we got that. But the machines don't understand the pattern. That's why we have that missing U. So they don't know like why one pattern. It's like wall is coming in front of me. Wall is getting bigger, getting closer. Somebody has to tell it that the next step is probably to navigate away from it, or you do some learning where it learns that. But that's because it has no understanding of that, right? There's no understanding. So I think without understanding, I think we're going to be pretty far away from AGI, although we'll be able to accomplish a lot of things that maybe we thought we couldn't do without AI, without AGI. We might have thought, oh, I didn't realize we could do this before we got to AGI, but it may turn out that we can do some things maybe earlier that are pre-AGI. I think we have a lot of, it's like when the nuclear cat is out of the bag, when we developed that, we're like, we thought we were going to be an era of unlimited power because nuclear fission would be everywhere. Clearly that didn't happen. Instead, we got stuck at the bomb phase and we never really matured past that. It's sad because the science fiction writers of the 1950s saw us driving fission powered cars and everybody having a fission reactor in their backyard. And yeah, we never got anywhere near that. So I think we're in that sort of thing right now with AGI that like we see all these things, but like now we're stuck with all these things. And I think we're going to deep fakes and all these things we'll get stuck on that before we get the problems, if you will, of AGI. That's my personal opinion. Maybe Kathleen has a different one, but that's what I think.
We do talk about this a lot, especially at the beginning of our podcasts. And AGI, it's a really hard problem to solve. When we talk about the opposite of that is narrow AI, so these individualized applications, and we can't even get some of them correct, we're a lot farther along than we think that we are. At least that's my opinion, Ron's opinion, because they really are hard problems to solve, and we don't yet have machine reasoning. So until we get that, we can't build an intelligent system that acts just like humans. We always like to call AI right now the toddler phase, where, yes, they can do things and they can do a lot of things, but would you trust your toddler to fully drive a vehicle? Probably not. Would you trust your toddler with a lot of things? They're still going to be pretty faulty. They're still not going to get things right very often, and they're still learning. I don't know when. I don't like to put a date on when we'll get to AGI, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon.
I think I share the sentiments of both of you. I feel that AGI itself is going to be something that we know when we have it, but then at the same time, we're going to have a lot of these little pieces that will get us a lot farther along, but won't quite advance past that toddler phase in general. And even if you can answer level challenges, their reasoning may not be behind it, or like you may get tricked up on anything that is nonlinear thinking because the approach is going. But also, I think even between GPT-3 and GPT-4, same sort of transformer model, a mixture of experts type of approach. And we got a nice jump in logic capability over that like little thing. So the emergent qualities that are coming out from transformers is pretty incredible. But at the same time, I'm with you. I don't think that we know how hard of a problem this truly is to create something that has that human level capability behind it.
This will definitely be part of a longer conversation. Be eager to come back and talk about what emergent capabilities we see out of these transformer models. But yeah, I think there still is a reasoning gap because you'll get in these situations where clearly the LLM is the GPT system is providing some sort of response, or it didn't quite it stopped producing results, or it started going down the wrong track. And if it truly was emergent, it would have realized like, oh, I'm producing results that are inconsistent with what the users requested, but there's no understanding like, oh, they didn't really mean to do that. Or it could understand really the difference between your prompt and your intent. And I think we're still not quite there yet, but who knows? We may be like a couple of models away from that. That's the thing. You never know.
who knows how it's all going to go. And there are brilliant people working on this like yourselves. And then additionally, on the model side, we have incredible individuals who are all participating in this. And additionally, I've heard Sam Altman talked about the alignment problem and that he basically thinks that AI is actually going to solve the alignment problem, which is a scary thing to think about. But at the same time, like that could quite possibly be a pairing between humans and AI to help come to the table. As we wrap up this episode, I know that people can reach you at aitoday.live. Is there any other additional information or resources that you'd love to share with the audience today?
Sure. Yeah. They can also go to cognilytica.com. That's COGNILYTICA.com. They can find Cognilytica on LinkedIn. As Ron mentioned earlier, we have a newsletter that goes out weekly and we publish it on LinkedIn as well. So definitely subscribe if you'd like to stay up to date on all that. You can also connect with both of us personally on LinkedIn. We share quite often on there as well. And then if they are interested in learning more about anything that we discussed, including CPM AI methodology, they can go to aitoday.live/CPMAI. We have a free intro course so that your listeners can take that and learn more about the methodology. And we do a deeper dive into the 7 patterns of AI as well.
Fantastic. I got to say, I greatly appreciate having both of you on today. It's been a lot of fun. And Ron, we're definitely going to dig into the emerging qualities of LLMs and the fallacies that can come about from these predictive engines. I greatly appreciate both of your time.
Well, thank you so much for having us. Really enjoyed the conversation, and it's almost hard to stop. So let's keep having it.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Again, thank you. Thank you for tuning into The Human Code, sponsored by Findustries, where we harness AI to elevate your business. By improving operational efficiency and accelerating growth, we turn opportunities into reality. Let Findustries be your guide to AI mastery, making success inevitable. Explore how at findustries.co.